Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Disney. Disney is ruining Snow White. Snow White is the first animated classic that Disney put out, and really it's what they built their company based on. But now they're destroying it. They're removing the dwarves from the story of Snow White. They're removing Prince Charming, and they're completely changing the whole look and feel of the animated classic. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Daily Mail did some phenomenal journalism. This came out on Friday from the Daily Mail. Exclusive Snow White and the 7 politically correct companions. First pictures of new live-action remake of Disney classics shows stand-in princess walking with diverse band of merry men and women after the battle over using dwarf actors. So they can't have 7 dwarfs because it's not politically correct enough. Even the term politically correct is now no longer politically correct enough. Let me take a moment to talk about what the history was of Snow White. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs came out first in 1937. It's an animated musical fantasy film produced by Walt Disney Productions and released through RKO Radio Pictures, which of course no longer exists. It's based on the 1812 German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. It is the first full-length traditionally animated feature film and the first Disney animated feature film. That's what they're ruining when they are ruining Snow White. The absolute core of what made Walt Disney's work possible in the first place. This is a cultural genocide. I know it sounds like an exaggeration, and it's definitely not funny, but it's really not an exaggeration. A cultural genocide, or ethnocide, is the attempted destruction of a group's culture, religion, and identity. It's a coercive act imposed by a dominant group upon a weaker or minority group. Now it applies to what Disney is doing, because this isn't the first switcheroo that they've been doing with removing their classic characters and replacing them with a race-swapped version. Tinkerbell, The Little Mermaid, now Snow White, they are destroying and removing the original legacy of what made Disney great in the first place. Everyone who knows Disney knows Snow White. Coming from the Daily Mail, hi ho, it's off to the job center they go, for the 7 dwarfs have been replaced by magical creatures for Disney's live-action remake of Snow White. To even think, to be at Disney and have no reverence for what Walt Disney did when he created these fundamental stories and these fundamental characters in their animated films, which was a uniquely American creation and something that is not a trivial creation, to think that they have the right to go and destroy the cultural heritage of what Walt Disney created is completely outrageous. I have seen this done with other books that I care about, where they've gone and they've rewritten stories to make them more culturally relevant and culturally significant. It's a horror when they do that. It is an absolute horror to do it to Disney, which was really closely tied in with American culture. This is why I say sometimes when I talk about Bud Light is a problem, because Bud Light and Budweiser, these were American companies that were part of American culture. You could say, fine, we're not going to support them anymore. And I don't think you should support Bud Light or anything from Anheuser-Busch. But when they go and they start destroying brands, characters, and identities that have been part of American culture for decades, it's a problem and it's offensive. It is a cultural genocide. The character of the fictional princess, who will be replaced by Rachel Zegler in the film, has been pictured for the first time with her new companions, who appear to be a mix of genders, ethnicities, and heights. You have to have diverse dwarves, right? Ridiculous. So you can't tell a story about dwarfs? Dwarves can't be in any kind of fiction anymore? It's not allowed? The actress wearing Snow White's famous yellow and blue dress and a red cape is trailed by the group, who are dressed in brightly colored clothes and carrying work tools. They were spotted shooting scenes in Bedfordshire on Thursday in pictures obtained exclusively by Mail Online. The scenes pictured here feature 2 stand-in extras who were used to film additional photography. Disney announced that magical creatures would replace the 7 dwarfs to avoid reinforcing stereotypes after Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage criticized the F-backwards story last year. Quote, I was a little taken back when Disney were very proud to cast the Latina actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, he told Mark Maron's WTF podcast. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, and you're still making that effing backward story about seven dwarfs living in a cave together. What the F are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough. They weren't living in a cage. They were living in a cottage. It's literature. You don't actually get to change literature unless you're committing an evil act. Disney bosses also came under fire for giving the titular role to Ziegler, despite the story being about a traditionally, quote, fair, meaning fair-skinned, German princess. The film, which stars Wonder Woman star Gal Gadot as the evil stepmother, is set to be released in March 2024. These are pictures that they were able to get. These used to be seven dwarfs. Now they're seven hipsters or whatever of multi-racial backgrounds of different heights, but basically there's only one dwarf and the rest of them are average-heighted people of different colors and genders and whatever. What a disaster. Of course, this movie is going to do worse than A Little Mermaid. It's going to do terrible. Co-written by Barbie's Greta Gerwig, the upcoming adaptation will not feature a Prince Charming and will instead focus on a stronger Snow White who dreams of becoming a leader. So if you're going to change the story completely, the only purpose in keeping the title of Snow White is to wipe out whatever culture and whatever story existed before you. Why anyone would think that they have the right to go and change a classic story and turn it into something that means something else, I don't understand. These are people brought up with absolutely no values by their family, and that is the problem. This is fundamental dehumanization when you wipe out stories that existed before your stories and then change them to be something else. It's ridiculous propaganda, and that never sells. It never does well, and it never makes money. Disney's new business plan is to sell off assets. That's what they're doing. From CNBC, Disney could soon sell its TV assets as Iger says business may not be core to the company. This is what Iger's plan is for Disney. He's going to sell off ABC and as many cable channels as possible, saying that they're not a, quote, growth business. The truth is that Disney is worth easily $300 billion. Right now, its stock market value is around $160 billion. Why is it so much less? Because they're managing the assets incredibly badly. So there's really no reason for them to retain these assets that they just don't want to manage well. To manage them well would be doing what fans want, would be doing what customers want, would be serving those customers, and it would be generating extra income. That income would make the stock price go up tremendously. Right now, they're at around a 39 price to earnings ratio. 39 times what they say their income is what their stock price is. So as long as they maintain whatever income they're claiming, they don't even need these additional assets, so they might as well just sell them. This explains that Iger is not going to be selling. First of all, he's not selling Star Wars. They're not selling Marvel. They will not part with any of the intellectual property that pushes their cultural revolution. That they're going to hold on to. They're also not going to sell any of the streaming services that allow them to go direct to consumer with whatever cultural messaging they insist on pushing on the public. They will remove anything that was part of Disney's original history and replace Walt Disney with Bob Iger, pushing their woke agenda. This is, to me, as a creative person, really sick. It's terrible to see them doing this. I can't tell you how dark and evil this is to see them doing this and to see them completely reorient the business only to do this. That is what they're doing. I have a business background, enough of a background to tell you that this is not an insignificant statement that Iger made the other day, talking about selling off ABC and their cable channels. Yes, it's technically not a growing business, but that's not what his concern is. His concern is clearly he wants to hold on to the streaming service and he wants to hold on to the intellectual properties. So he has direct-to-consumer messaging for all the propaganda they're pushing through their intellectual properties. Iger is behaving like a supervillain. Ms. Ziegler previously addressed reports that the film was trying to be politically correct, claiming that the story needed refreshing. She said, "People are making these jokes about ours being the PC Snow White. Yeah, it's because it needed that." She's like 22 years old or something, Ziegler. She does not know what stories need. Quote, "Our version is a refreshing story about a young woman who functioned beyond someday my prince will come." Well, but that's what this story was. that you can't say I don't like this story because it puts out a narrative that I don't like. So I will just redefine the story because I'm a cultural destroyer. The Colombian American actress faced scrutiny by some critics after she was cast as Snow White, who was described as having skin as white as snow. In a since deleted tweet, she wrote, quote, "Yes, I am Snow White. No, I am not bleaching my skin for the role." Disney's 1937 animated film follows Snow White as she befriends the 7 dwarfs while hiding from her wicked stepmother, who later poisons her with an apple before Prince Charming wakes her from her slumber with a kiss. It was loosely based on the 1812 fairy tale of the same name by Brothers Grimm. Dinklage, this little fella, his concern was shared by some charities, including the Restricted Growth Association in the UK. Quote, "I very much stand with Peter Dinklage on the disappointment and irritation towards Disney for the remake of Snow White." Rhonda Cutmore, a member of the association, told The Telegraph, "As a 46-year-old woman with restricted growth, so she's small, this story has always had a negative impact on me. Well, sorry, but it's not all just about you. Not just the physical characteristics, but the labeling of dopey and bashful were not helpful in the playground. I had problems on the playground too. Yes, of course, I was the tough guy and beat everyone up when they messed with me. And not everyone can do that, but we all have to make it through the playground. The playground is not supposed to be equal and fair. You have to learn how to grow up somewhere, and it's gonna start at the playground. Grow up, lady." She added, "People with restricted growth are a majority born to average height parents. They never live in gingerbread houses, have little bear breads, nor live in homogeneous groups together." Dwarfism writer Steph Robinson said she hoped the film producers make an effort to avoid stereotypes in its retelling of the classic movie. "It's impossible to avoid stereotypes. Quote, it is my hope that the latest live-action remake and Disney will at the very least go some way to redress the decades of the one-dimensional stereotypes that our disability continues to experience, especially within arts and cultural settings," she told the outlet. You know, if you want to have positive perceptions of cultural work with respect to whatever your limitation or your disability is, or what your unique condition is, you need to produce that work. In fact, if you go and you pitch it to Disney, they'll probably fund it just to promote whatever it is that you're doing. But you have to actually create something. You can't just complain about it. The story also has been criticized of being ableist for portraying the dwarfs with lesser intelligence and Snow White with seeing them as children. It's the story. It's a fairy tale. It's been very well received over the years. It's a classic. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think Disney made the right move by changing the entire story of Snow White, by removing the dwarves, by casting someone of a different ethnic type in a role that was clearly intended not to be for that ethnic type? Does this make any sense, or do you agree this seems kind of like you're trying to wipe out a culture and wipe out their stories? And exactly why they're doing it, it's impossible to say. But do you agree with Disney making these changes, or do you think they should have honored the first full-length animated classic produced for American cinema, which Disney built their entire company based on? Let me know what you think. Always love to see your ideas. Really appreciate you. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.